Hey, hello, and welcome to the Ferguson Library Presents Basic Microsoft Excel here tonight, here on YouTube. So I just want to say good evening to everybody, and we'll start going over everything that we need to do for this class here. So to start off, you would want to visit the website that's right here above my head, fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. And so when you go to that page, because this is where we have all the information about our online classes that we're doing during this time that we're not doing classes in the library. And if you come to the page, it will be this page here. So what you can find on this page here is right up here at the top, we have the link to the YouTube channel, which if you're watching this right now, you've already found it. Good for you. I recommend that you subscribe to the Ferguson Library to be able to always get updates on the different video content that we're doing. We're doing lots of different things, and keep doing even more onto YouTube. So, like for example, we have like our Beethoven program, and our children's department is always posting fun story times and videos on here. Moving down, we have the class schedule, and so you can see right now we're here onto the fourth class here, Basic Microsoft Excel, Tuesday, September 22nd from 7 to 9. Once again, you don't have to worry about the link here because if you're watching this video, then you've already found the link there. Our next class is next week. I'm going to be doing Intermediate Microsoft Excel, same time, 7 to 9. And the link to watch that video that evening is right here. It's already all set. The links for the other ones will be coming when we get closer to those dates. So you can see an update of the schedule that we have going on. As we scroll down the page, over here on the left, there's going to be two sections down here under the Online Technology, Class Materials, and Resources. On the left, we have all of our different class materials for all of our different classes. So if you've missed any of, say, the Word classes that I've done the past several weeks, all of those recordings are right here on the YouTube channel. And the exercises and the handouts and everything are available right here. For tonight, though, we're interested in this one here, the Basic Microsoft Excel. As you see, when I click on the link, it will open up this little section here. It gives you a description of what we're going to be looking at in tonight's class, and then some things to hand out, or some things to download. And so what you want to do with this here is you'll want to right-click on the link that says Exercise Handout. And I'm in Firefox, so in here it says Save Link As. And so when I do that there, I get my classic Windows file save window there. Choose where you want to save it, someplace that's easy to find. You can see I already downloaded this earlier this evening. And then click Save, and it will save it on there. And then do the same thing with the Formulas worksheet. Right-click, Save Link As, and then save it into wherever you want to do it. I have a folder on my desktop called Basic Excel where I'm sticking all of these for tonight. The other thing to pay attention to for tonight is the chat room over here on the right. There are two different ways to participate if you have any questions during this class. One of them is to use the YouTube chat right below the video. Go right below or right next to it, depending on how you have your screen set up. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in there. What you're seeing is on a slight delay from where I'm at, so I may not see your question immediately when you ask it, or I might be continuing on when you ask your question, but I will come back. I will see all the questions, and if I think it's a good place to stop, I'll answer it, or otherwise I'll come back at another time and answer your question. So I will try to answer any questions that you send me. If you don't want to sign into Google or YouTube to be able to use the chat on there, right here on the webpage over here on the right is a chat room here. You can come in here and you can just type a message. You can type your questions right here in the box down here, and I will see these as well too. And you don't need to have an account or anything to use the chat here on the website. So if you have any questions, those are the two ways to get hold of me during the course of the stream. And so that's that. Trying to think if there's anything more I need to go into for get things organized for tonight. If there's anything else I think of as we go through, I will bring it up. But for now, let's go into what I'll be covering in tonight's class. So tonight is Basic Microsoft Excel. You don't need to have any experience with Microsoft Excel to take this class here. So some of the things I'll be covering in this class here is we're going to be looking at how to become familiar with the Microsoft Excel interface and terminology. We're going to look at how to open, close, and create new workbooks and worksheets. So we're going to be looking at what Microsoft calls the Backstage View for Microsoft Excel, which is where you get kind of all of that kind of administrative functions for the files that you create. And I'll be explaining kind of that better. We're going to look at how to enter and edit data in a Microsoft Excel worksheet. We're going to look at how to select data in an Excel worksheet, because the thing is once you put the data in, you have to select it to be able to do a lot of the different things, and I'll show you how to do that. We're going to look at how to create basic charts, and then we're going to also look at the basic writing of formula. Formula are like the math and the kind of the different kind of calculations that you're able to do in Excel. So we're going to look at the basics of doing that there. With that, let's go into and start looking at Excel here. So I'm going to bring this back up here. So when you first open Excel, this is kind of what's going to greet you. This is what's kind of the introductory Backstage View in Excel. This is what you get if you just open up Excel without opening up a specific Microsoft Excel file. Now for this evening, what you're going to be seeing me demonstrate here is Microsoft Excel 365, part of Office 365, Microsoft's kind of live online Office program. Everything here should be close to the same if you're using Microsoft Office 2016, so Excel 2016 or Excel 2019. Those are the two most recent versions of Microsoft Excel, and everything here should be about the same. If you're using a little bit older version, Excel 2013, Excel 2010, things might look a little different. Everything we're doing in tonight's class will be available in every version of Excel. If you are trying to do something and it looks a little bit different, or you can't find what I'm demonstrating, and you're trying to do it yourself, then let me know in either of the chats, the YouTube chat or the chat on the website, and I will then kind of help explain kind of where you'd find it in 2010 or 2013. So don't be discouraged if what you're seeing is not matching what you're seeing on my screen here. There is a reason for that there, and we can kind of help you out with that there. So that is Microsoft Excel. So this is kind of what the Backstage View in Microsoft Excel looks like. So when they say Backstage, all it is really just kind of this administrative window here where you're able to either like choose like a new file here, so you can see new or open here. And then later on, once we have a file open, we get things like our save and our print options in there. And we'll see that as we go through and create our spreadsheet tonight. Oh yeah, I just wanted to quickly show, I didn't open it, so let me open it up here, the handout. So if you downloaded the handout, this year's going to have information. So up here we have our basic kind of objectives that we're looking at the class. There's a little bit of some kind of guidance here. It's kind of some highlights in the ribbon here. I'll be talking about the ribbon when I start talking about the interface in Excel. Some basics for the formula there. And then on the second page, we have the exercises that we're going to be doing tonight. I do have to kind of beg your forgiveness on this here. Down here on the further study and practice, I have information about lynda.com. Unfortunately, the library no longer has a subscription to lynda.com. We do have a subscription to a new online learning service, and when we get to the end of the class, I will show you how to access that and what's available there instead of lynda.com. I didn't get the opportunity to kind of update the handout here for that yet. Next week's class for Intermediate Microsoft Excel should have that updated in the handout. But for now, disregard this section down here, and at the end of the class, I'll go through and explain what the alternative for it is now today. So let me know if there's... Oh, and the final thing, I have to make notes about when I do the YouTube classes here about this. The final thing actually is... I know it can be difficult. You're watching the video, watching me show and demonstrate things, and then when you want to go and try to do it yourself in your own version of Excel, sometimes you have to change windows from there and such, and so you're not able to see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do through this class is I'm going to explain a skill, I'm going to demonstrate it, and then I'll probably explain it again really quickly, and then I will give you about 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how long I think it takes to kind of do that skill, and then you can go off into your own Excel file and do that exercise so you're able to kind of follow along And that's a good time to ask questions, or if you're trying to do what the exercise is saying, so like the different exercises that we have here, and it's not making sense, ask me a question and I can go through and explain it again for you and the rest of the class. So again, what I'll do is I'll be demonstrating and explaining while I demonstrate, and then I will give you the opportunity to go and do it on your own in your own Microsoft Excel that you have on your computer. So with that, if there's any questions, please drop them in either the chats, and we will continue in starting to look at the interface, or how you start using Microsoft Excel, and how to kind of navigate and move around Microsoft Excel. So as I mentioned, when you first open up Excel, you're greeted with this kind of introductory view here. And most cases, what you're going to want to do is right up, if you have recent files, so if you've been working on like a Microsoft Excel file, they'll be down here. You can easily just kind of open up things that you've opened up recently. But most cases, what you'll want to do is you'll want to start by opening a new blank workbook. And so you can see I can do this right up here. I can just click on new blank workbook and it will open up a new one. Alternatively, I can come over here to the sidebar, and you can see I have two options at the top up here. I have new, which I open it up, and so there's the new blank workbook, or a simple invoice if I wanted it there. But down here, we also have all the different templates. Don't really worry about the templates tonight. This will be something that I will cover in next week's class in Intermediate Microsoft Excel. So if you're interested in templates and how to use them, join me next week from 7 to 9. The open down here allows me to open an Excel file that I've previously created or has been sent to me. Again, I have either the most recent ones that are here, or I can browse and find something on my computer using the standard open window thing here. So with that, we're going to actually just do a new Excel sheet. So I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to click on Blank Workbook, and you can see now it will open up our blank workbook here. This is kind of the typical scene that you'll greet when you first open up a blank workbook. I use the terms workbook and worksheet through the course of this tonight. So Microsoft Excel calls its files workbooks, and it's kind of easy to remember it as kind of like a notebook of like ledger information. So you have all the different squares on there and such. And then in a workbook, you have multiple pages or sheets. And so this right here, what we're seeing on the screen right now, is a worksheet. You can have multiple worksheets in a workbook. And you can do that there by clicking down here at the very bottom. You can see this little tab that says Sheet 1. Down in the bottom left, I'm moving my mouse to kind of make sure it's visible on there. It's kind of a little bit hidden behind the Ferguson library logo. I apologize for that. But then there's this little plus symbol next to it that allows me to, and you can see when I put my mouse over it, it might be a little hard to see. It says New Sheet on there, and I click on that, it'll just create a new tab. And so now I have two different worksheets that I can work with. So it's a great way to kind of organize information that if you want to have things in one place in your workbook, and then you can create a whole new set of tables and organize information like on another worksheet, but then they're all bound together in the same file. So you're not having to juggle 3 or 4 different files. You have one file, but then kind of different sheets going on in there. A good example of this here, just from my uses that I use at the library, is I track our daily reference stats at the library. And so I have a workbook. I have an Excel workbook that I've created that has a different worksheet for each of our different information desks, the first floor, second floor, third floor. And so for a single day or a single week, actually, all the data for that week is stored in one worksheet, but it's easy to find which, whether it's on the first floor, or the second floor, or the third floor, where those stats are. So I'm able to you can use the different worksheets to kind of organize your information. Some places to pay attention to on the interface for Microsoft Excel. Our main center section here, this is your work area. This is where all the content, this is where all your data gets entered and worked with. You do everything in kind of this middle section here. And what I'm going to do for the course of this evening is I'm actually going to zoom in. So when I start entering in numbers, they will appear a little larger for you on the screen. So this is our work area here. And so each of these different boxes here are what are known as cells. So each cell can have a piece of information or a piece of data in it. whether I just have numbers in there, whether I have names. So whether I do something like that, or I have money amounts. We do something like $5. That's not right. 5. I did not enter that in right. There we go. $10, etc. On and on. You can have the different pieces in each of the different cells. Now the cells are organized in rows, left and right rows, which are all numbered 1 to infinity, pretty much. And then they're also organized in columns, up and down, and the columns are used by letters. So A, B, C, D, E, F, and it goes up to, after Z, it goes A, B, and it continues on until further. At this point, you're probably not going to be making anything that's going to go below, making any spreadsheet that's going to go beyond the standard alphabet. So, but it does extend pretty far on its on the columns. And so each cell, because of the columns having the letters and the rows having the numbers, each cell has what they call a cell address. So suppose I click on this cell here in column C, row 3. You can see right up here in the top right corner, it says C3. So this is actually the address for the cell, C3. And it's an important thing to know, and you'll see that as we get a little bit later on in the class, that using these addresses, you can actually refer to the cell and therefore refer to the information in the cell and use that for things like formulas and math functions. So, for example, it starts up here at A1, and then we go like B1, C1, D1, E1, A2, B2, C2, D2, E2. And so on. So it's so you basically say the name of the column and then the number of the row, and that's the cell address. Now above our content work area here is this box here, which is it's kind of the entry box. Now a lot of times when you're entering things, you can enter things directly into this cell. But up here in this box here, you can be a little bit fancier with how you do things. You can put in spaces. You can have additional rows. We're not going to really get much into that in tonight's class. We're just going to look at some very basic data entry. But this allows you to have a little, and also be able to see what's in the cell better. And I'll demonstrate that when we have information in the cells later on in the class. But sometimes the information that's in there runs off the edge, and up here you'll be able to see all of that information. Now, further above that is the other very important part of the Excel interface and worth paying attention to. So right up here at the top is what we call the ribbon. The ribbon has been Microsoft's kind of standard navigation interface in Microsoft Office since Office 2007. So it's been in there about 14 years, almost 15 years at this point. Because Office 2007 came out in 2006. I know, numbering, how does it work? And so the ribbon has kind of like, it's separated into a variety of different tabs, and you can see the tabs up here at the top. We have a home tab, we have insert, page layout, formulas, data, review, and so on. Depending on your version of Excel and what options you have turned on, you might see a little bit different tabs than I do up here. But most times you should definitely have the home, insert, page layout, formulas, all out there. For tonight's class, we're going to be focusing a lot on the home and the insert tabs. And as we go through the exercises, we'll kind of take a look through there. Down below, we have access to all the different functions or the different tools. Now, these are the things that would usually have been hidden behind like a menu. So like there would be like the file menu or the edit menu or like the view menu. Instead of having them behind menus, they're kind of always available right here on the ribbon here. So over here on the left, we have our clipboard. So this is where we're able to copy and paste. So you have access to your copy and paste tools over here. Moving over, we have our font kind of functions here. Now this is if you've done Microsoft Word or you're familiar with Microsoft Word, this should look very similar because this is the same font kind of grouping that we have in Microsoft Word. So you're able to change what the font looks like, the size of it, the colors, whether it's bold, italic, underline. And you'd think, this is not a word processor. Why do I want to be able to change the font or something? And what happens is that being able to change things like the color or making things bold or underlined helps you to be able to kind of make certain parts of your data stand out from other parts. And so we'll play around with a little bit of that as we get further into the class, as we kind of organize our data. I'll kind of show you some of the reasons why you might want to kind of change different fonts or change colors or something on there. Moving over, we have alignment, and this again is very similar to the alignment or paragraph section that's in Microsoft Word. So alignment basically determines where the text shows up in the cell. Now, depending on the type of information that you put into an Excel cell, into the cell, it will get presented in a different way. So if I type in, say, words, I'm going to just type in the word words. You can see that they are over on like the left side of the cell. It's actually what they call left justified. Now, if I put in a number, let's put in 150, you'll notice that 150 is over on the right side of the cell. And so numbers tend to get right justified and words tend to get left justified. So you have left justify or right justify. You could change that based on your preference. But it's just a nice default to know that if you have a cell that's being treated like letters or words, it will kind of always be lined up on the left, and then numbers will always kind of line up on the right. And the reason for that there is that when we have more words and even more words, just the way that we kind of read words, we kind of like to have this nice even left side there to look at on there. Whereas when we do something, say, like numbers, so I'm going to do 1, 10, 100, and 1,000, you can see that as I enter the numbers, because they're all right justified, if I have like a single space number, like the number 1 here, it lines up in what we call the ones place. And so all the ones places here line up, all the tens places here line up, the hundreds line up, and the thousands line up, and so on and so on. So that's the reason why there's that default left and right justification. It's just the way that we as humans prefer to read words or numbers and have them kind of lined up to kind of easily analyze or understand them. Because let me actually go in, I'm going to change this over to the left, and you can see if I do this here, it's a little bit harder. If I tried to add this up here and such, I have to mentally do a little bit more work than if it was all together over on the left-hand side. It's just the way that we visualize and work with numbers in our minds. So that's the alignment section there. Two kind of useful little tools here in the alignment section here are wrap text. Now you can see when I typed in here where it says more words, sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. Let me just mute this here so I don't sneeze at the microphone. Okay, it didn't happen. So you see here when we have like more words, it actually kind of ran out the side of the cell there. And so what happens is that, I mean, I could change the size of the cell, but also what happens is I can make if I click the wrap text, what it'll do now is it'll take the words that run over the edge and kind of move them down and make the cell a little bit larger to fit all the words. So everything's visible in the width of the cell that's there. If I do the same thing here where I have even more words, wrap text, you can see it's even taller than the one above. But all the words are now visible, that if I put something into the E row here, if I put something here and something here, it wouldn't cut off that edge over there. So that's what the wrap text allows me to do. So just some things to kind of pay attention to as you're working in Excel, kind of alignment, how things get entered. Moving over, we have number. So depending on what type of numbers you're entering in, are you entering in just plain numbers? Are you entering in money? Are you entering in currency? Are you entering in percentages? Excel will kind of treat those numbers all a little bit differently and display them differently. Like for example, if you put in as money and you put in negative amount of money, instead of it showing a negative sign, it might, I think it colors it red and puts it in parentheses, which is the classic accounting way of entering in negative amounts. So by putting it in money, it'll automatically format it to handle the math with money, and then it'll also do things like limit it to just cents. And so instead of having like a number that goes 101.35678, it would just be 101.36 or something like that. It'll automatically kind of cut that off, and then it'll put the money sign in there to make it easier to read for humans. So those are just kind of the different numbers. I highly recommend when you have the opportunity, getting into Excel yourself and just kind of play around. Enter in some numbers and play around with the different numbering formats just to see what they can do. One of the best ways to learn this year is not taking a class like this year or doing any of the online learnings. It's just getting in there and playing around with things yourself, seeing what they do, and learning how different things work. So don't be afraid. You're not going to break Excel, and you're not going to break any of your files by experimenting or doing anything there. So if you get yourself completely fouled up, just close it out and open up a new worksheet and just start again from the beginning. It's as simple as that. Moving over, we have styles. We're not going to really look at this section here tonight, even though it seems to take up a really big section on the home tab. We will look at things like conditional formatting next week in intermediate Microsoft Excel. But tonight we're kind of leaving this here to the more advanced classes. Same thing over here, like inserting and deleting cells. We're not going to really kind of work with any of that here tonight. Just the fact that they're there. Now, to look at other tabs on the ribbon, you just click on the tab. So I was in Home right here. I'm going to click over to Insert. And so Insert is all the different things that you could insert into your Microsoft Excel worksheet. So you can put in pictures, you can put in charts. We'll be looking at the charts a little bit later tonight. And so there's a whole bunch of different kind of charts. You can do different things with text and symbols. Again, the key is get into it, play around with it, see. We're only going to look at, tonight we're really only going to be looking at charts. So we're going to get in there, we're going to play a little bit with charts, but the best thing for you to do is to get the experience yourself and kind of play around with it there too. The page layout gives us, if you're going to be printing the worksheet, gives you your controls over how the page looks and how the page is organized to be able to print out onto paper. Something, again, we're not going to really kind of get to this class. And things moving on, we'll be looking at some of the later classes. We'll be looking at some of the stuff, things like review and things in, or data in the intermediate or in the Microsoft Office integrated class that's going to be happening in October. So the final kind of thing on this screen here to kind of pay attention to in kind of the interface is down here on the bottom. We have our status bar. So I already introduced down here in the bottom left. I introduced the kind of the different worksheets and the tabs that we have between the different worksheets. Down here is just a status bar that will kind of give you information as you're working through on the class. And sometimes it will do things like over here on the bottom right, if I select some numbers, it will give me some basic math to be able to kind of work with those on there. So I am just going to actually delete everything here so we end up with a blank worksheet. And now the final thing I just want to kind of show before we get to actually working with Microsoft Excel is there's one more tab up here. It's not really a tab, but there's the File tab. And so when I click this takes me back to the Backstage View that I was showing you at the beginning of the class. And you'll notice now over here on the left, we still have the home, the new, and the open. So those same three options that we had at the start when we first opened up Microsoft Excel. And then we have some more options available here. So there's things like info. If I click on info, what this does is this gives me info about the file that I'm currently working on. Right now, there isn't a lot of info yet because I haven't saved the file or entered in any information into it. But this is where you'll be able to find some basic information like who the author was, the file size, and just kind of different things you can use to organize the file. I don't tend to use a lot of stuff in here, but it's something that's available and to be aware of. We have our save capabilities here. And so you notice if I click on save right now, it automatically jumps down to save as. And the reason for that is that I have not saved this file before. So there's no file name or a file location where on my computer it gets saved. And because it does not know where to save the file or what file name to save it as, I have to do save as first, which is save as basically allows me to choose where it gets saved and what file name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click browse, and I am going to go to my desktop, and I have a basic Excel folder on my desktop. I'm just going to call this class Excel. And so you can see I was able to browse using, let me bring this a little to the center of the screen so it's a little bit easier. I was able to browse to where I wanted to go just using the standard Windows file navigation. And then down here into the file name, I was able to type the file name, and then it's going to automatically save it as an Excel workbook. And I just click save. And now you can see right up here, it brings me back to my work area, my worksheet here. You can see right up here at the top on the title bar is now the file title. It tells me class excel.xlsx, which is the file format for an Excel file. It tells me that it's saved. Now, if I go back to file, I can now click save, and what it'll do is it will save it to that same location with that same file name, basically overwriting or just saving over what I had there before. So if I make any changes, it will then write it over and save whatever my current changes are. Now, if I wanted to save it as a second file, so I go and make some changes to it, and I want to still have my original, my first file that I opened up without the changes, I can come to Save As, choose a new location, and choose a new file name, and have two different files. One that was my original, and then one has the changes. The final things that we have here is we have our print. So if you want to print the Excel worksheet, I will caution you, we're not going to be taking like this tonight, but I will caution that trying to print from Excel sometimes can be really difficult. It's not exactly the most graceful program to print from. It's gotten better, but you still do have to kind of work and kind of tweak things a bit to kind of make sure that you're not running off onto a whole bunch of extra pages. So it's definitely something to play around with if you have a printer and are willing to kind of maybe waste a little paper to kind of see how it comes out. But other than that, and then there's just some things here that are part of like the newer versions of Office. So like share, I can share it with other people using like by email or into like Microsoft OneDrive. Export, I can send it out to a different format if I want to make it a PDF, etc. Publish, I haven't actually ever really looked at what Publish does. Power BI, so business intelligence. Okay, so it can be able to do some different kind of things here. This is probably a service provided by Microsoft. So that's really kind of what that does. Beyond what we're going to be looking at here with the class. So I have gone through and given kind of a brief tour of Excel here. Let me know if you have any questions or if I use any terminology through the rest of this class that I haven't defined, or you don't know really kind of what I'm referring to. Just ask a question in either the chat, so the YouTube chat or the chat on the website, and I'll explain what I'm saying there. But at this point, let's get in and let's actually start seeing how we can start working in Microsoft Excel. So how do we start entering data? And we're going to do that there by looking at our exercises, which is on page 2 of the handout. Let me open it up here so you can kind of see. So we're going to start right over here with exercises, and we're going to be duplicating the table on our blank worksheet. So we have this big W supermarket sales where we have some fruit and the different sales over the quarter. So we're going to go in and we're going to enter. I'm going to show you how to start entering this information into Excel so that we can start using this information, using this data, and doing different things with it. So I'm going to go back to my blank worksheet here. So once again, I have I'm in worksheet 1. I have my blank content area here. And so the first thing I want to do on our table, and actually what I'm going to do, just so you can easily see on here the comparison with what I'm going to do, is I'm going to put these side by side. Yep. There we go. So now you can see the worksheet that I'm working over here, and I'm actually going to zoom in a bit to make that a little bit bigger. How's that? That looks good. Hopefully my head won't cover it up as I continue, as I scroll down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this table here into my worksheet over here on the left. So right up here in the first, into A1, so it's like the top left of the table here, I'm going to put in big W supermarket sales. And you can see it kind of runs off into the other cells. We'll take care of that in a second, whereas here, it seems to kind of just have one box that it's in. Well, we'll take care of that in just a second, but we're going to go in and put some of our other information. So coming down, there's a gap here, and then we're going to start with our next row. So this is row 3. So you can see I'm over here in row 3. What I'm going to be entering into this row is what's known as a header row. And so a header row is a very useful place. When you're starting to enter information into Excel, I always recommend start off with, say, a header row, where you actually go right across in the columns, and you list what information is going to be in that column. And the useful thing for that there is that it reminds you as a human, as a user, using the computer, using the Excel worksheet, what information is supposed to go into that column. So you don't have to remember that column B is supposed to have this certain piece of information, and column C is supposed to have this piece of information. You're actually saying, so column B is going to have quarter 1 information, column C is going to have quarter 2 information, column A is going to be product. It's going to have the product names on there. And so it just kind of makes it so that also anybody else who's coming and looking at your table or looking at your Microsoft Excel workbook will understand what the information listed there. Like on here, if I just had these numbers listed, 521, 376, 300, 235, without this quarter up here, there wouldn't be kind of a way, there isn't an understanding, there isn't any context for that information. So by putting a header row, you're providing that context, you're making it easier for yourself to remember and use your table. Plus that header row gets used in other information in other places when you start doing some more advanced stuff with Excel or combining Excel and Microsoft Word on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in our header row here. I'm going to put in product. Then we're going to do quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. And so entering in the information, and I just realized I'm supposed to be talking about how to enter information into there. Such, it's just a matter of clicking on the cell that you want to work with and then just typing the information that you want to have in there. So I'm just typing in the information. Now I could, if I going over here to the next one here where I'm going to be putting total sales, I could click like I did here. I moved my mouse over and clicked on it, but I can also hit the tab key on my keyboard. So the tab key is over on the left of your keyboard. It's usually about the 3rd key down. You have the escape key, you have kind of the tilde accent key, and then right underneath that is generally the tab key. So the tab key will actually move you to the right a cell. So it's kind of convenient if you're entering information like really quickly in Excel. You don't have to keep picking your hand up and going over to the mouse and kind of clicking to the next thing. You can just hit tab. It'll move you over to the next cell on there. And I will indicate that here. So I'm doing total sales, and I'm going to go down and start over here. And so my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the first product. So apples. And now I'm going to hit the tab key, tab, and you can see it moved it over to the next cell over. So I need to finish filling in this table here. This is a good opportunity. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes. Go off into your own Excel file or Excel workbook, open up a blank worksheet, and start duplicating the table that is on the exercise document here. So this table here in Microsoft Excel. So practice typing in the information to match what we have here. If you haven't downloaded the handout, what you'll want to do is you'll want to go to fergusonlibrary.org. Let me just quickly pop this up so you can see the address: fergusonlibrary.org/online-tech-classes. So you'll want to go to this address here, and then you'll scroll down, go to Basic Microsoft Excel, and this is the handout here that you'll want to download. So you'll want to either click on it and it'll open it up as a PDF, or you can right-click and save link as if you want to save it to your computer. So take about 4 minutes and enter in that information. I'll enter it here too. If you have any questions, please ask it in either of the chats. So you can ask it in the YouTube chat, or you can ask it in the chat room on the page here. And go to Excel. And I need Just take a couple more minutes. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so I hope everybody's had some practice being able to enter in this table into their Microsoft Excel document. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to continue on. Again, please let me know if there's any questions, and I will answer them. So you can see right now my table over here on the left is pretty close to the table that's over here on the right. One of the things that's different is where I have Big W markets, Big W supermarket sales. This year all just takes up its own box, whereas over here it seems to be kind of like extending over into the B and C boxes. What I did when I created this table over here on the right is I merged those cells together. And this is just a little thing. It doesn't do much aside from like change the aesthetics or how things look. The thing is that if I go in and start typing something here, you can see it cuts off the rest, so I'm not able to see all of Big W supermarket sales. So what I can do actually is if I highlight, and so this is a good time to show how to actually select cells in Microsoft Excel. So you start being able to do things with the data and the information that you've put into Excel by making sure I can see my status screen here. By selecting things. And so you'll notice that when I have my mouse, that if I have my mouse over here in the PDF file over here, it's this little hand icon. When I put it over here in Excel, it's this little plus. This is the kind of white plus symbol on there. And so what that is that's just Excel's cursor for being able to select different cells. And I can select cells by clicking and dragging. So if I click on A and hold down my mouse button, I'm holding down my left mouse button, and I move my mouse to the right, it will then start selecting the cells to the right. If I move it down, it'll start selecting the cells down below. And you can see I can have multiple cells selected. I could have one cell selected by just clicking on it. So that has this little green border around it. That tells me that cell is selected. If I highlight and drag over here, you can see now the green bar goes around these three cells, which tells me those three cells are correct. So then whatever changes, or like if I change the font or the color or anything, it's going to happen to all three of those cells at the same time. I can do it left and right, I can do it up and down, and then I can also do like a two-dimensional select by going left and right and up or down at the same time. So if I do something like this here, I have my, what is this, like 21 cells selected here all at once. And then anything I do will happen in all of those there. So that's the way to kind of select cells to be able to start manipulating and working with the different things in Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my first three cells up here, because that's how it all kind of runs in. And I'm going to actually just make this a little bigger so you can kind of see. Right up here on the ribbon, right up in the alignment section, there's this merge and center button. And what this basically does is this merges the cells together and then centers the information. So if I click on this, you can see now this is now all one big box. Instead of being three separate boxes, you can see if I click on it, it selects when I click here, it just selects this one cell. If I click here, it selects all three of these together, because now they're seen as just one individual cell. This whole thing now is A1. So A1 is actually larger than B1, and C1 no longer exists. They got merged into A1. And all it is, in this case, all this really is this is just something that just kind of makes it look nicer. It just makes that title kind of run over and kind of fill in that all completely. That's all that really kind of offers. So let me get this back to here so we can kind of see these both side by side. So any questions on into data entry or in kind of merging the cell? It's just a little thing. It's a little fun thing to do to kind of make things look a little bit nicer. Moving on in the class, now we're going to look at how to do some basic like arithmetic, some basic formulas to do some math. Because once you have numbers entered into Excel, you can use Excel to start doing kind of mathematics involved to do the different things. Because that's what we want to do. We want to be able to have the data in there and then be able to analyze and do different things with it. And the most basic thing that we do with different numbers is we add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So you can see our second exercise that we're doing here is we're going to try to find the total sum. So how many apples, oranges, and pears? I don't know why I didn't do the grapes either. I think I missed that in my. I have to remember I update that in my my handout. But we're actually going to do grapes as well too. How many of them were sold overall throughout the entire year? So I'm going to come over here to total sales. You can see I actually created a column when I was designing this table here. I created a column where I'm going to be able to put these totals in there. So I'm going to come over here, and now I could pull out a calculator and I could type in 521 plus 519 plus 560 plus 575. I could type that into a calculator, hit equals, I'll get a number, and I could type that number here into total sales. It's a perfectly valid way of doing that. But Excel gives us flexibility. First of all, Excel can do this calculation. You don't need to have a separate calculator to do it. And I'm also going to show that by using the certain formula in Microsoft Excel means that if these numbers ever change, this will automatically update as well too. So that's really the key of using formulas in Microsoft Excel. Is that what they call dynamic, which means that by let me demonstrate. It's easier to demonstrate than it is to kind of try to explain this here. So you start off entering a formula in Microsoft Excel by hitting the equals key. So I'm going to hit equals, and so by doing equals, what I'm doing is I'm telling Excel that this cell, the one that I'm in right now for this total sales in the row for apples, is going to be equal to whatever I put after the equal sign. And so I can put whatever I want after the equal sign. I could put, if I wanted to, I could put 654, enter, and it will say, okay, it's 654, because I told it that the cell, this information in this cell is equal to 654. But that's not what we want to do here. Now since I'm doing a sum, there's a couple different ways to do the sum. And if I go here onto the handout over here, you can see on the addition here, there's a simple method and then there's the function. So the simple method would be A1 plus A2 plus A3. So let me show you how that works here. So if I go here, what I want to do is I want to put in the addresses, the cell addresses. Remember I was talking about that at the beginning of the class. The cell addresses for the different cells that I want to add in. So over here, this first number here for Q1 for the apples, this 521, is in B4. If I go click on this here, you can see it says B4. So what I can do is I can do B4, and you can see as soon as I type it in this address here, it shows up in blue in my cell over here in my formula, and then right over here we have a blue box drawn around the cell there. So what happens is it kind of gives you this nice visual indication about which cell that you selected. That if suppose I had typed this in wrong, B5, you can see it selected this one down here. It's not the one that I want to do. So it's kind of a nice way to verify and kind of see that you're getting the right cell. So now I want to add it. So I'm going to do the add symbol or the plus sign. And now I want to do C4. C4. And now you can see C4 it gets colored like a red color because it's recognized as a different cell and a different number. Not a different number, but a different cell. You can see over here that's matching kind of red colors around it there. So now I can see I have my blue and my red. These are the two cells that are being included in the formula that I'm writing. I'm going to hit plus again, and we're going to do D4. And you can see this one does purple. And then I'm going to do plus again one more time because I have a fourth quarter, and we're going to do E4, and that one's green. So now I have the total sales here is going to equal B4 plus C4 plus D4 plus E4. So this number plus this, what's inside this cell, plus what's inside this cell, plus what's inside this cell, and plus what's inside this cell. And that's going to add it all together. Now I specifically said what's in the cell instead of the number because I'm going to hit enter right now. And it's going to do the math. So there's my total. So the total of these four numbers here is going to be 2175. Now, the reason why I said the information that's inside the cell rather than the number in the cell is that if the number changes, so I'm going to take this 519 and I'm going to just make it something much different. I'm going to do 800. We're just going to change the number in there. You'll notice over here, the total sales now changed. It went from, it was like 2175 or something like that there, 2456. And the reason for that there is that the number that it was being added in changed over here. So it automatically updated the sales. Right there, 519. There we go. So that's one way of doing that's one way of doing a sum in a in a formula. It's just doing the cell addresses plus the next cell address plus the next cell address plus the next, and do that for all the ones that you want to do. Now there is a more formal way of doing, or a kind of a function. Function are the different kind of math features, or not just the different tools, the different kind of that Excel has built in to be able to do a variety of different things with the information that you entered. So you can, there's functions for adding, subtracting, there's for multiplication, there's functions for counting, there's functions for finding averages, there's functions for finding like the mean or the median. There's functions to deal with letters and words, what they call concatenation. You can put like words together and kind of add things together that way. There's a huge variety. There's a bunch of different analysis, bunch of different counting functions that are available. We're not going to go into almost any of them tonight, but I'm actually going to just open this up quickly and kind of take a look over at the formulas. If I come here to the formulas tab on the ribbon, you can see that there's financial functions, there's logical, so things like and, or, not, text functions. You can do things with dates and times, math and trigonometry, all those different kind of things you can calculate in Excel. There we go. And you just, it's just a matter of finding the function that you need. So like next week, we're going to be looking at intermediate Excel. We're going to be looking at things like HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP, which is a really kind of fancy little function that allows you to kind of pull information from a table and look it up by doing a search. And so that's another thing so we'll look at kind of writing those kind of more complex functions next week. Today we're just going to look at some basic arithmetic though. I showed you here doing equals and doing the address, cell address plus cell address plus cell address. So there. But the most common way, the way to use the function in Microsoft Excel is by using what they call the sum function. You can see that over here on the formula basics. Over here on the right, it says equals sum, and then has the cell addresses in there. So that's kind of the typical way. And so that's the way usually you want to do sums, because it just ends up being more universal for Excel than doing the adding. And let me show you how that works. So what I'm going to do is, just like I did before, I'm going to be starting off the formula using the equal sign. So I'm going to hit equals, because again, that tells Excel that I'm putting a formula into this cell here. And now I'm going to type in sum, S-U-M. So, and you can see when I start typing in, it starts giving me suggestions down here. of different functions. So you can see there's a whole bunch of different functions that have sum in them. The first one here is sum, which is the most basic, the one we're using. And it'll tell you right here in this little tooltip, adds all the numbers in a range of cells. So this just adds all the number together. So what we're doing here is we're doing the same thing that we had up here. In fact, actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it right up here next to this one here, equals sum. So you can see it's going to add up to the same thing. So I'm going to click on sum, double click on sum. And you can see now it automatically added this parentheses. So what happens is the parentheses, we have the sum function, and then inside the parentheses, we're putting the numbers that we're adding. So the first number that we're going to be adding is going to be this one over here, this quarter one here. And I could, if I wanted to, I could type in 521. But the problem with that is if I do 521 and then I change this number here, it will not change the sum. So I want to use the cell address, just like I did before. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to type in B4. And just like it did when I was doing this one here, it's now colored this in blue. And it's made a little blue thing over here. But down below, you can see I have this little tooltip that's telling me how to write this function. And so there's the sum, there's the open parentheses, and then they have number 1, which is what I've entered in here, and then there's a comma after it. So instead of putting a plus sign, I'm just going to put a comma, and you can see now it's now taking me, and now it's made bold the word number 2. So now we're looking for the second number in my sum. In this case, it's going to be C4, and there's again that same coloration, C4, comma D4, comma E4. And then I'm going to close the whole thing because I had an open parentheses over here. I'm going to mark the end of the formula by doing a close parentheses. So now this reads here, this cell here that I have this here is going to be equal to the sum of B4, C4, D4, E4. All of these different numbers there. So I'm going to hit enter. And there you can see it's now added up to the same thing that the other one did, but it's just written in a little bit different way. So those are the two different ways to do sums in Microsoft Excel. Now you could do just the plus if that's easy for you, but I do recommend doing the sum equals sum because there's more flexibility with writing the formula like this here. And what do I mean by more flexibility? Well, let me show you kind of this next scenario. Let's add up the number of grapes that got sold through the year. So instead of doing the plus like I did the first time, the simple method that I have over here, we're going to use the function here. Now, in this table here, it's a small table with a small amount of information. It's not hard for me to write out. I'm only looking at 4 different cells. It's not hard for me to write out the addresses for those 4 different cells. In this case, it's going to be B5 to E5. I can write B5, C5, D5, E5. But what happens if you're working with a table that has, say, 40 rows and you want to add up all 40 of those numbers? You're not going to sit there and type B5, C5, D5, and then go all the way up to like AB5, AC5. You're not going to type all those individual things. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to enter in a formula using a range of cells. So a range of cells, basically you choose the first cell, the cell that it starts at, and then you enter in the last cell, and it will choose that first and the last and choose everything in between. Let me demonstrate. So I'm going to do equals. Again, always start off a formula using the equals key. We're going to do sum, just like we did before, open parentheses. So now we're kind of in the same place that we were when we were starting to add up this number right up here. So I'm going to start with my first number that I want to add up, which in this case here is at B5. We want this grapes one here. So I'm going to do B5. And you can see, just like before, this is no different than how we started up here. It's colored in blue. But instead of doing the comma to enter in the next number, I'm going to enter in a colon. So the colon is shift, and then it's usually like right in the middle row of your keyboard next to the enter key. Usually like 2 left from the enter key. It's usually next to the apostrophe key on there. But the colon is the indicator to Excel that I'm entering in a range. So I've entered in the first cell in my range. And now I'm going to enter in the last cell for my range, which in this case here is going to be this where this 410 is, which is at E5. So I'm going to type in E5. Now you can see both of these cell addresses here are blue, but then this selection here, the selection box here, is around all 4 of these cells. So what this is telling me now is that all 4 of these cells here are being included in the sum of my formula here. So then I'm going to close my parentheses, hit enter, and now it's just added in. So instead of having to go and type in B5, C5, D5, E5, I was just able to easily enter in sum B5 colon E5, and I was able to select it all the way over. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you about 3 minutes, go into your own Excel table that you've had here, and using the sum function, so equals sum, and then you can either do the like with the commas, or you can do with the range, depending on how you want to do it. I recommend trying both. Try practice both. Find the total sales for the apples, grapes, oranges, and pears, and then also find the total sales for Q1, and see if you can figure out how to do that. If you have a question about that there, let me know in the chat. I'm going to go through and do it here myself, but take about 3 minutes and go do that yourself in your own Excel file. And just for reference, we're looking at exercises 2 and 3 on our exercise sheet here. So find the total sums for apples, oranges, and pears sold, and then find the total sum for fruit in the first quarter. Just take a couple more minutes. Right, let me know if there are any questions with this here. But so let me actually just let me get my email here. So let me just, because I did kind of throw out the challenge about being kind of able to add up the quarter here. Let me click on here and show you the formula that I wrote for this year. So if I double click, actually, you'll be able to see it. So what I did was I did equals sum, just like we've been doing with everything else. And so before, remember I was doing B4, C4, D4. I was going across the row there to add that up. Here I decided I wanted to add up the column. So it's B4 to B7. I was able to add that up there. Now, one of the kind of the neat tricks that you can do in Excel is I've done I've done the formula to add in this column here. Now I want to be able to add these other three columns. Actually, let's do all four of the columns. We'll do the add for, well, let's do the sum for the other quarters and then the total sales here. Now I could go to each column, type in my sum here, do C4 to C7, and I could do that for each of the different for each of the different columns. For a table like this that's kind of small, that's fine. It doesn't require that much work. But again, we want to be able to think about what happens when we're dealing with larger Excel worksheets with a lot more data in them. What kind of shortcuts can we use to kind of make things a little bit easier? And so one that's built into Microsoft Excel is being able to actually copy or actually like transfer the formula that I wrote here over to the other columns. And it's really kind of neat. So if you look at the cell here, it's selected, they have the little green border around it, and down in the bottom right corner is this little box, this little green box that's on there. So if you notice, if I put my mouse over it, as I move my mouse over it, it goes from this white cross to this little black cross. And what that does is that tells me that I'm kind of in the mode to be able to kind of drag this formula across the cells. So what does that mean? So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click and hold. And now I'm going to drag it over here. And you can see I'm selecting these cells all the way down to as far as I want to go. And then I'm going to let it go. And now you can see now as it's gone in and it's filled in the numbers here. What did it fill in? Let me click. And so now you can see this is now filled in C4 to C7. So it's filled in the sum for that there. Oops. Double click on this one. This one's D4, D7. I didn't have to type these in individually. Just by dragging that box across those cells, what it did was it's what's known as creating a series in Microsoft Excel. And so the series recognized that this formula here was written for this column, B4 to B7, in column B. When I extended the series over to here, it's like, okay, so you want to do the same math in C column with the C cells. Over here, it's the same thing, the D column with the D cells, and then all the way down here to the F column with the F cells. So by dragging that to the right, I was able to kind of drag that math, but then it updated the formula to match the column that it was in. This also works with rows. So remember over here, I wrote this 2175 here using B4, C4, D4, E4. I didn't do the range like I did before, but I still have all the things in the for row. If I drag this green box down, you can see it's now, if I do this here, you can see this now says B5. Actually, let me double click so you can see it here. B5, C5, D5, E5. Double click on this one. You can see it matches with the row that it's in. So that's just kind of one of those really neat tricks that happens in Microsoft Excel, is that you can drag what they call a series. If I click on this here and click on with that little black cross there and then drag it down, it will extend the series when it as far as you drag it down and kind of do that math for the appropriate row or column as it goes. So just one of those kind of little neat tricks that happened. Now, one of the things I just want to kind of show here that's kind of information. Create formulas to total sales. Okay. For some reason, I have an exercise here that I've already actually done. So we've already gone up and done exercise 7. We're going to go do some other formulas in another worksheet. But one of the things I just want to kind of show here before we kind of move on to kind of playing around with the different formulas and then working with some charts is doing some formatting things to kind of make things a little bit easier to read. This is kind of just something that when you're working with Excel, it's kind of nice to be thinking out at the beginning when you're designing your tables and putting in the information. You could put things, if you're just doing something really quick and dirty that you're just trying to get some quick numbers that you can then copy and paste into like a Word document, you could just leave everything basic like we have here, but sometimes you want to make things a little bit more presentable. Like if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or you're putting something into like a Word for a report or something. So some of the things that I like to do is I like to make my my header row, the header row that has the information about what each of the columns have, kind of stand out a little bit more. And so maybe what I'll do is if I come up here to the font section, this here with this paint can with the yellow on there is what they call the fill color. So this is the background color of the cell. Right now the background color of all these cells is white. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to just say choose this green here. And so I'm going to choose, and so I click on it and I choose green. And so now you can see behind that there is, it's green. So now what happens is it's made this row here stand out from the other rows. Now, another row that I may want to stand out is down here is my total row, because this is the total of all the ones. So these numbers here have a different meaning than the numbers that are all entered up here. While these numbers here are like specific sales of each of those fruit in that quarter, this here's a total. So I want to make it stand out a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll make that bold. So now you can see that this number here stands out from the ones right above it. And since this is also totals over here, we'll make that bold as well too. So now this here, so these numbers here are all the individual sales, but these ones here are totals. And you know what I might do is I'm going to make this bold to kind of match that over there. And then you can do different things. Like you can actually go in and you can change like the coloration. I want to make this kind of that color. Apples will be red. So you can kind of see I can go in, I can make oranges orange. And pears, we already did green. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this up here to a different color. That blue. Make pears, because pears are green. There we go. So now you can see I've also then kind of matched and so by doing something like this here, I've also made it really easy. If I wanted to read the apples, I can just easily read across. My eyes can follow that single band of color easier than they can if it was just a sequence of numbers. Sometimes when it's just like a whole bunch of numbers jumped together, our eyes aren't able. So here I can easily see 521, 519, 560, 575 going across on there. So you can kind of play around with the formatting and the design of things. Like I can make this up here, I can make that bold if I want to, and maybe underline so those kind of stand out. Again, just different ways of kind of making the text stand out, or the different information on it stand out and more easy to read. There's different ways of doing that there. So let us, we're actually going to skip over exercise 4 right now quickly, and we're going to go in and kind of do some more practice with formulas. So we're going to do that by opening up the, on the class materials, there's this second link here for formulas worksheet. So what you want to do is you want to right click on that, do save link as, save it to some place on your computer, and then open it up. Go to that place, and so like I have it here, formulas practice. I'm going to double click on it, and it will open it up into Excel. Come on, there it is. So now it's opened up into Excel. I'm going to zoom in to make it a little bit easier for you all to read. Now, because this file was downloaded from the internet and I opened it up from a place where I downloaded it on the internet, you'll notice that Excel gives me this little warning up here. Be careful, files from the internet can contain viruses. Unless you need to edit, it's safer to stay in protected view. So what happens is this got opened up what they call protected view, and I can tell that right up here on my title bar. It says protected view. This is just a safety precaution that's put into all Microsoft Office software. So this will happen in Word, it'll happen in PowerPoint. So if you get sent an Excel file and you're not certain of where it's from, and it's just some information that you need to look at, you don't need to edit or change anything, you can keep it in protected view, and it's a way to kind of keep your computer a little bit safer. In this case, this file can be trusted. I know because I created this file, I put it on our website, I downloaded it from our website, so I can trust this file. So I'm going to click Enable Editing because I also want to make some changes to this file here. So what I'm going to do now is we're just going to kind of practice some of the other mathematical formulas that are out there. So there's the, I just showed you how to do addition or sums using the sum function. But then there's also the, and so we can do that there. So our first exercise that we have here to do in this file here is to add cells A2, A4, and A6. So these cells here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose a place over here to write my formula. We're going to do equals, because remember, we start off all formulas with the equal sign, sum, open parentheses. And now what happens is I have a couple different options on how I can do this. I could do A2, comma A4, comma A16, not 16, A6, A6, there we go. And by doing that there, you can see it's individually selected each of the cells that I've put there. So I'm going to hit enter, and there's my sum. So 4 plus 8 plus 16 is 28. Now I could have also done equals sum A2 to A6 and done the range in between. Now in this situation, well, this was a little bit easier. I didn't have to type in A4. I didn't have to do all the different cells and such and such. I get the same number. Now, the reason why in this situation on this worksheet with the numbers separated like they are, that I would rather do the individual, I'd rather write it out like this, is if I go over here, let me just go, so this way here, what this formula here is written, if I open this up here, this A2 to A6, you can see the box that's selected over here includes A2, A4, A6, just like it should, but it also includes A3 and A5. So what's the problem with that? Let me go over here and let me enter in, say, another number into A3. Now all of a sudden you can see over here, this number changed because I've added in a new number inside of the range that was selected or that I entered into my formula. So this formula is still the same. It's looking for the sum of all the numbers between A2 and A6. I've just added in a new number into there. So you can decide to do either the individual cells or do the range depending on what you're going to do, how you're going to be working with the information or the data that's already entered. If you've put in gaps into your data that you know that you're going to be filling in the future, you could write the range here so that then that sum automatically gets updated when you add in that new information. But if you're looking to add the specific cells, I'm looking to specifically add A2, A4, and A6 and not anything else, I want to be able to enter those in individually, A2, A4, A6. And now, as you can see over here, it doesn't include this information that I just put into A3. So when you're writing your sum files and deciding whether to write out do the cell addresses individually or to use a range using the colon sign, be aware of kind of how it may change things if you change your data there. So moving down, I'm going to move down to the next thing. We're going to look at the second to-do that we have on here, which is multiply cells B3, B5, and B7. Now, I can't use the sum function that I just showed you because the sum adds numbers together. In this case, we want to multiply the numbers together. Now I'm going to go look at my handout that I gave you here. Get this back in. There we go. And let's go back and look at the first page. And you can see over here multiplication. There is the simple method to do it. I could do equals C asterisk C1 asterisk C2, C3, C4, on and such. And the asterisk is the symbol for multiplication. It's like the cross sign that we used to do when we wrote out multiplication. On computers, because X is an X, it's a letter, it's not a mathematical function, they've adapted the asterisk symbol, which is Shift 8 on your keyboard. Or it's on your numeric keyboard, it's up on the kind of the top right if you have the numeric keypad over on the right side of your keyboard. So for the sum, for this multiply here, I could do equals, because we're starting all formulas with equals, and I could do B3 asterisk B5, asterisk, B7, and then hit enter, and it will do my multiplication for there. But we do like to use the different functions that are available. So one of the function that you can do for multiplication is what's known as the product function. So a product is the answer to a multiplication problem, if you remember that from school. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit equals, starting off all of my formulas with that there, and I'm going to enter in product. And you can see down here, it's offering me a suggestion of product, and it tells me multiplies all the numbers given as arguments. Arguments is the information that's inside the parentheses. So if I do parentheses here, and you can see my tooltip down here is telling me number 1, number 2, just like it did with the sum function. These numbers are what are called arguments. It's a math computer programming term. But so that when you see arguments, it usually means kind of what information are you feeding into the function. So we're feeding in numbers. So I'm going to feed in B3, comma, B5, comma, and B7. And you can see I wrote this here. It works exactly the same as the sum function did that I wrote before. I just have a different function there. It's doing product instead of sum this time. Hit enter. These two here are now equal. Now with product, you can also do a range. Equals product. And it doesn't matter if you enter in the function name with capital or lowercase letters. I just tend to do capital letters because that's how it always kind of recommends, but you can do it in lowercase letters as well too. And I can do B3 to B7, oops, open parentheses, B3 to B7. And you can see I did that same range like I was doing with all of the sums. Hit enter. It equals the same as all the other ones do, but this has the same issue that it has with the sum. If I come over here and put in a number 9 into the middle of that range, it's going to change that number there because it's going to be one more number to multiply in there. So again, decide on whether doing the individual cells or the range, depending on what you're doing with your information at that time. So now we have 2 more exercises here. We have divide cells and we have subtraction. Now there isn't functions for division or subtraction. So let's go back to our handout here. Actually, it's interesting because there isn't, I mean, you can see there isn't a subtract function and there isn't a divide function like there is for addition and multiplication. So we have to use the different functions. We have to use the functions that we have in a different way. So you notice over here where I say sum b1 minus b2, I'm using the sum function, but then I'm telling it to do a subtraction instead of addition on there. So let's see how that works. So we're going to skip from doing division. We're going to do subtraction here first. So I want to subtract cells D1, D2, and D4. So what we're going to do is we're going to do equals sum, and I'm going to do D1 minus D2 minus D4. And you can see once again it's selected the individual cells just like it did before, and I'm going to enter. And so now I have 91. So it's 100 minus 5 minus 4. The order in which it works is the order that I entered it in. So it's going to take D1 and it's going to subtract D2 from that number, which in this case we're going to get the answer 95. And then it's going to subtract D4 from that there. So D4 minus, it gets us to 91. Now, with subtraction, it is important to kind of know the order of the numbers that you're entering in. Now, if I did a sum, if I did the sum up here, this sum here, where I did A2, A4, A6, it doesn't matter what order I add these in, because addition, the order of the numbers do not matter. So if I go in and type in A4, comma A2, comma A6, choosing the same numbers, I'm going to get the same answer. With subtraction, the order does matter though. And what happens is it'll always work from left to right. In fact, let me go look at my handout here because I have this information on there. Such the order of we have to remember the thing what we call order of operations when it comes to math and formulas in Excel. And a simple thing to remember is this PEMDAS, PEMDAS, or the kind of the mnemonic that people always use. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So the way that you go through is it's parentheses. So anything in parentheses gets worked on first. Exponents. So whether it's something like to the third power, or to the fourth power, or to the second power, something that's squared. So parentheses, then that exponents, and then it does multiplication and then division. So we have our please excuse my dear, addition, and then subtraction. And then it from that there, it does it all left to right. So let me demonstrate what this is actually doing. So let me go back to here, and we'll look at some of these different. Actually, what I'm going to do is let me put these side by side so we can see. So we can actually see the. I'm going to move this over to here, so we can see this order of operations in action. So let me go do my subtraction here again. So equals sum, and it was D1 minus D2 minus D4. So in that order there, it worked left to right. So it's going to start with my D1 is my first number that it's going to work with. It's going to then it's going to do this operation first. So it's going to do D1 minus D2. It's going to do that first. So it's going to be 100 minus 5, and then it's going to take the answer to this D1 minus D2, and it's going to subtract D4 from there, so minus 4. So that's where we get 100 minus 5 equals 95, minus 4 equals 91. What happens if I do that in a different order? So sum D2 minus D4. Actually, let's do D2 minus D4 minus D1. Now what it's going to do, close parentheses. So now what it's going to do, it's going to start with D2. It's going to subtract from that D4. So it's going to go 5 minus 4. It's going to be 1. And then it's going to take that answer, that 1, and subtract 100 from it. So my answer here is actually going to be negative 99 because of the different order that I've had it do the subtraction in there. I could do something like, okay, so equals sum, because if you notice on our order of operations, I mentioned about parentheses. You can use parentheses to force certain math to happen first. So sum D4, nope, not D4, D1. So we're going to start with the 100. I'm going to then subtract, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another parentheses here, and we're going to do D2 minus D4. So, and then close parentheses, and then close parentheses. I have to close it twice because I have one opening parentheses here, and I have a second one there. So the way this is looking at now, when this resolves, how this math here works, is that the first thing it's going to do is it's going to do the parentheses. So it's going to look here. It's Excel's looking at this here, and it says, okay, there's this section here, D2 minus D4 inside the parentheses. So it's going to do this math first. So it's going to do 5 minus 4 and going to get the answer to that, which is 1. And then it's going to subtract that 1 from 100. So the answer I'm going to get here is 99. So even though this actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up here. So these are next to each other here. These two, if I double click on this here, it's D2 minus D2, D1 minus D2 minus D4. This one over here is also D1 minus D2 minus D4. But by adding in the parentheses, I forced it to do this, subtract these two numbers from each other before it subtracted from there, whereas before it did 100 minus 5 minus 4. So when you're trying to do math in Excel, It is important to remember the order of operations. And if you, I mean, most times if you're doing things, if you're just doing like a basic sum or a multiplication or something like an average or something, you can just go in, put it in, choose the cells and not do anything really fancy. But sometimes you do need to kind of like do math in one part of your Excel worksheet and then bring it over and do math in another part. And you can use the different order of operations to kind of do that kind of math itself. Again, it's something that's very important if you go in and practice and experiment and kind of try different things out. The final thing that we have, I just want to demonstrate, is division. So division can actually either be, you can use the slash key for the division symbol. So I could do equals, we're doing C2, C5. So equals C2 divided by C5 divided by C8. And once again, just like with subtraction, the order that I enter things in here matters when it comes to how this resolves. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to do C2 divided by C5. So it's going to do 118 divided by 45. And then it's going to take the answer of that and divide that by C8. If I wanted to change that, so this here would give me this 0.093651. If I wanted to change that, if I wanted to divide these two first, I can do equals C2 divided by parentheses. Remember our parentheses. C5 divided by C8. And so now what it'll do, close parentheses, is it will divide this first and then divide C2 by that amount. And you can see I got a totally different number than I did before. And that was what the parentheses does. You can also use the parentheses to do different mathematical functions. So if I did equals C2 minus C5, divide by C5 minus C8, something like this, what this will do is this will divide 45 or 118 by 45. So it'll do this math here first, and then from the answer of this here, it will then subtract the 28. So this actually 118 divided by 45 is less than 28, so I end up with a negative number. Now, if I also wrote C2 divided by parentheses, here's the parentheses, C5 minus C8. So now what this formula here tells me is that it's going to subtract C8 from C5. So it's going to subtract these two numbers, and then it's going to take the answer to that and divide C2 by that. So you can see I'm using the order of operations. I'm using parentheses, and then I'm doing kind of the order, whether I'm doing multiplication or division first, to determine how the answer is going to be coming out. I've kind of gotten into a little bit of a tangent showing how math works in Excel, but it's kind of important to know when you're writing formulas how that kind of operation works. Now, I did show you when I was writing division, I was using the slash key to mark the division. You can also use the product function, and I can do C2 slash C5 slash C8. There really isn't much difference between using the product or just putting things into the slash in this case here. And I'm kind of curious. It's something I have actually never, I don't even know if I can do, I don't even know if you can really do a range with the division. It's something I'd have to look into do if I wanted to do like the range between those. But yeah, I'm not certain if that would actually work. So that has been kind of a quick look at kind of the basic arithmetic functions in Excel. Let me know if you have any questions, please, in the chat. It can be a little bit confusing, especially since I kind of went on a tangent talking about these different orders of operations. But the orders of operations are important because if you don't follow them or keep them in mind, you're going to get unexpected results with your math. So we are done in this formulas practice sheet. I am now going to go back to, don't save, I'm going to go back to my original spreadsheet that we were working on here. And I just want to show actually one more function that's commonly used, especially when we have like a whole bunch of numbers here. and it's the average function. So, or what they call the mean. The mean is the average. And so this is a common thing that you want to do sometimes with number to kind of get a sense. Okay, so what was my average sales in quarter 4? What was the average sales of apples sold throughout this year per quarter? So usually the way that an average is normally figured out is you add in all the different numbers that you're averaging together. So if we're going to look at the average number of, let's do the average sales for quarter 1 between all the different fruits. What I would do is I would add together all 4 numbers of these sales. So I would do, so that's this year, this 1432 is the sum of all these 4 numbers. And then I would divide that sum by the number of numbers that I have. So I have 4 numbers. So I would then divide the sum by 4. So I could write this out actually as its own function, equals sum. And we're going to do B4 to B7. So there's that number there. And then I can do divide by 4 because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And hit enter. And there's my average kind of written out. But Excel actually has its own average function, which does all of that mathematics. The thing is, again, this is easy to do when I have 4 rows. I'm only dealing with 4 numbers. Now, what happens if I have a spreadsheet that has 250 different rows and maybe not all of them have numbers in them? Suppose that there's only 140 numbers. I could go through and count all of those there to do my average, or I can just have Excel do that for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do equals average. You can see it's now suggesting, so I'm going to double click on average. And so now what happens is now it's just looking for the numbers. I can then enter in my range the same way that I've been doing before. I can do B4 to B7. So now what this formula here has just done is I'm writing the average of from B4 to B7. Enter. There's my 358. The same thing that I did before when I wrote out the actual average steps before. The nice thing about writing it out like this means that I can also go through and do my drag. I can drag my series across. And so there's my formula for the C column. There's my average for the D column. And there's my average for the E column. So so there's just, I mean, I've shown the basic mathematical functions, the sum, the product, how to do subtraction and division, but then there's also things like average, which will do a lot of that that math, the extra math, the adding all the numbers together and then dividing by the number of numbers, all wrapped into a single function. And now, remember before at the very beginning when I was giving you your tour of Excel, I was talking about the status bar down on the bottom. Sometimes when you have a table information, you need to get like a sum or an average, or what they also call the count. A count is the number of cells that you've selected that actually have something inside of them. Sometimes you just need to get that there, and you don't want to write the formula. You don't need to write the formula. You just need to get that number. So if I'm looking at this here and it's like, okay, you know what? I want to know what the sum of between quarters 2 and quarters 3, like how many grapes were sold in quarter 2 and 3 together. For whatever reason, I need that information. I could go and write equals sum and then do, was it C5 and then D5. I could write that there and such, but then I have to enter that in and such, and then I have to delete it afterwards if I'm cleaning it up. I could, if I come over here and drag over these 2 numbers, select these 2 numbers right here. These are the ones that I'm interested in. I'm going to look down here in the bottom right. And it's probably going to be a little small on your screen, but you can see down at the bottom right are these there's actually 3 different pieces of information that's given in the on the status bar here when you have numbers selected. The first is the average. It will just give me the average for those numbers that I selected. So here it's adding in 389 plus 401 and dividing by 2 and just giving me the answer. So now I know, okay, the average for that was 395. The count, if I put my mouse over it, you can see it says the number of selected cells that contain data. So if I have like a whole bunch of cells, like actually, I already closed it. Let me open this up here again quickly. I just want to show you what the count actually does. Let me just zoom in to make this a little easier to see. So all of these numbers here, you can see that there's gaps between the numbers. If I highlight all of these here, I've highlighted 32 cells. But if I look down at the count, only 12 of those cells actually have information in them. So the count for that is 12. And so that's just kind of an easy way. Sometimes you're going to have like a list of numbers and there might be gaps, or a list of information there might be gaps, because this count works for words as well as for numbers. There might be gaps in there such, and you just need to know how many you have in that whole list. Where there might be gaps, you could just highlight it and see that count, and then it will tell you how many things that you have entered into there. So that's what the count is, kind of just like a useful thing to keep track of. Don't need this anymore. And then the final number that's showing over here is the sum. So remember, like my whole hypothetical situation is set up here is I needed to see how many grapes I've sold in quarter 2 and quarter 3. I can just highlight them like I did there and then look down here. Okay, so it's 790. And so now I have that number to use. I can just come over, okay, 790. I didn't have to do any other, I didn't have to write any other formulas. I didn't have to do anything else. I could just grab that number to use for whatever purpose I need to do. So by highlighting, you get kind of this useful information down here of the average, the count, and the sum. You can see I highlight this quarter 4 column here. There's the sum, 1591, which matches my sum that I did here, the sum formula. And then there's my average, 397.75, which matches that average function that I did before. So you can see how it kind of matches up there. Okay, so we're closing into the last part of this class, and I do want to show you how to make basic charts or graphs in Excel. Because this is the other thing that you want to do in Excel that you tend to want to do that's kind of easy to do. So creating charts is, making the chart itself is not very difficult. It's a very straightforward process. Making the chart look the way that you want it to do does take a little bit of practice and does take a little bit of tweaking sometimes. A little bit of adjustments. And we're not going to spend too much time working on those adjustments and kind of different things, but it's something you can definitely get in and kind of continue to play around with in Excel on yourself. So I'm going to show you how to create the basic charts and where some of the different changes are. And then you'll have the opportunity on your own practice afterwards to play around with those kind of different kind of options. So in order to create a chart, first you have to tell Excel what information you want to create the chart of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight, I'm going to select where the information is that I want to share. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select down to here. I'm going to select up here. I'm not going to do my sum columns because that throws off how the chart gets displayed. I want to actually just compare my apples to oranges to grapes to pears. So I'm going to select, this is my table of information that I want to create the chart from. So I did that by clicking on the top left corner of the information and just dragging it down to the bottom right corner of the information. Now I'm going to go over to the Insert tab on my ribbon. And right over here in the middle, it's like right smack where your eyes are looking, or in the middle of the ribbon, there is the chart section. And you can see there's a variety of different charts I can create. There is column or bar charts, there are line charts, there are pie charts, there's hierarchy charts. There's a whole bunch of different kind of things that are available. Statistic charts, scatter plots. And if you're into statistics and you're into creating charts and presenting data in different ways, you will know kind of the different reason to use a lot of these different kind of things. In this case, we're just going to do a basic bar chart because we want to see kind of bars measuring how the different fruits sold for each quarter compared to each other, or maybe compared to the quarters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up here where it says Insert Bar Chart. And so in Microsoft Excel, here we go. So you can see when I click on the button, there's this little downward pointing arrow next to the button on there. And what that indicates to me is that it's going to open up a menu of choices. So if I click on this here, you can see I have my menu here. And so I can do like a 2D column, I could do a 3D column, I can do, so columns are bars that go up and down, bars go from left to right depending on how I want to present the information. So So we're going to do a column graph, and we're just going to do a 2D column graph here. And you can see actually I can do different, I can choose, and it gives me a little preview down here of what those different ones are. So there's the clustered column. So compare values across a few categories. So if I look here, this here compares the fruit to each of the other fruits in the same quarter. If I go over here, this here kind of compares, again, we have a comparison of the different fruits per different quarter, kind of stacked up to each other. And these both kind of work about the same. One of them does it in percentages. One of them does it in the actual specific numeric numbers. We're just going to do the 2D column here. And so now looking at this here, you can now see I have my chart. And so here in quarter one, here's my apples. And you can see down here they have the key. So this green is the apples. This orange is the grapes, this gray is the oranges, and the yellow is the pears. So there's quarter one and the different fruits kind of compared to each other. So now I can kind of play around with different ways this chart gets displayed. So I can do things like the chart title. If I click up here, I can now type in, I can type in the title that I want. This is going to be Big W Supermarket Sales. So there's the title, so that somebody looking at this chart will know what it's showing. And then we have our labels down here, so the colors matching. If I wanted to, I can change the colors to kind of whatever set. They have a whole bunch of kind of selected colors here. Or I could go in and actually, if I come over here, so you can see over on this menu here, how do I change these colors? But I can go in and I can actually change the specific colors if I want to as well. The chart can actually be dragged around. You can see actually there's these little handles around it that indicate that I can actually click and drag it around. I can also resize it if I want to make it larger, so you're able to kind of read it a little bit easier. I can make it narrower if I wanted to. I can make wider, I can make it taller. I control the vertical, I control the horizontal. This is the outer limits. So this is comparing the different fruit sales for each quarter. But I can also change how the different data gets presented. So for example, if I come up here and select, there's the switch row column, click this here. Now what I can do is I can actually then compare the different fruits and how they did in each quarter. So here's all of the apples together with quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. Here's all the grapes together. Here's all the oranges, and here's all the pears. So this might be more useful depending on how you want to present the information. If I do this here, it's saying, okay, apples are obviously the most popular fruit that we sell. So therefore, we need to be stocking more apples throughout all four of the quarters. But by doing this, what this tells me is like looking here, it's like, okay, apples were more popular in quarter four than they were in quarter one. So we want to be making sure we stock more apples in quarter four than we do in quarter one. So the way I choose how the information is getting presented provides different information, provides a different analysis. You'll notice also, once you've created a chart and the chart is selected, if you look up here on the ribbon, this is another important thing that happens in Microsoft Office, in all Microsoft Office programs. So it's happening here in Excel. This would happen in Microsoft Word as well too. Is you'll notice that we have two new tabs up on the top in our ribbon here. We have a chart design tab and a format tab. Now, if I click outside of the chart, you'll notice that those disappear. And the reason is they're what's known as context-sensitive tabs. So if I go click on my chart again, they'll show up. And they'll only show up when I have a chart selected because they're specific. They're context-sensitive for charts. So the chart design basically is the design, the colors, how it looks, and everything there. And then there's the format, which is then how is the information presented on there. And so the format is things like, okay, do I have a border put around? If I go put a shape outline and I'm going to make this like red, you can now see I have like this little red border around there. So this is, the format is actually like the format of the box that the chart is in. chart design will change information about the chart. Some information some things that's useful in the chart design ribbon here is I already kind of showed change colors and change start styles. So if I do this here, I can use one of these pre-selected styles on how the chart looks. If you're looking for something, if I want a dark background on there, you can see that there's a good number of different kind of chart backgrounds, and you can see it provides numbers or information in like different ways on there. Like now it's actually showing the different numbers up at the top, so that you're not trying to figure it out based on the scale on the left and right. Over here on the left, we have our quick layout, so you can actually choose how things get laid out. So you can actually see, like if I do something like this here actually gives me a space for a title. So I can just do number of sales. Let's see if that works. Yep, there we go. So you can see now I've entered in, so this is the number of sales that got entered in there. But then this also includes the table of information. So if I pulled this chart out and put it into a PowerPoint presentation, somebody would be able to look at the visual cues, boom, 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 kind of compare how all the apples sold together, how all the grapes sold together, but then they can go and see the actual specific pieces of information. So they can get that specific data that they need just by looking at this one image here rather than having to go back to the table. So you can choose those different kind of what they call elements. You can add in titles and the tables, and if I open up chart here, you can kind of see all the different elements that are on there. So for example, things like data labels, this here puts those numbers, and if we do outside end, it puts them up there kind of at the top. And so now I can actually see this was 521, 519. I'm not trying to guess that, okay, this is a little over 500. I mean, this is a little less over 500. I can actually see specifically what the different numbers are. So this is definitely something to kind of get in and kind of play around with on your own, and kind of see how different chart functions and different chart elements display when you're making your charts. This is where it's really easy to make the chart, but then you can spend a good amount of time making adjustments on how it actually gets presented and looks. And sometimes you have to kind of play around with selecting your data and make sure that you're presenting it the way that you want it to look. So let me know if there's any questions on any of that there. We are kind of at the end of the class. But I really encourage you, if you're really kind of excited about this year, to kind of go in and kind of continue learning, get in and kind of practice around. Work with the exercises that I have here, just kind of play around with it, because the supermarket sales table here is kind of a nice small amount to kind of play around with formulas, doing different charts. See what happens when you make line charts or pie charts. How does it actually look? What happens when you choose different groups of data? And so instead of choosing the whole thing like I did here, what happens if you just choose quarter 1, or what happens if you just choose like quarter 2 and quarter 3? How does that change the chart that you create there? If you wish to continue your learning, as I mentioned on the handout, unfortunately, there is the information here about lynda.com. Please ignore that there. I am going to show you. Let me go back to our website here, and I am going to go to Ferguson Library. We are offering access to a service called Udemy, which is it's another online learning site, and it's a great place to go and continue your learning for Microsoft Excel. So the way to get there is if you go to fergusonlibrary.org. I should probably put this link over here into the class page, but for now you would go to Learn and Explore, come down to Research. Actually, go to Careers. Let's do Careers in Education, because this is where we have kind of all of our education kind of resources. And click, and what you want to do is come down to computer skills in this tab here, and this will list a whole bunch. And I do recommend, if you are looking for learning kind of basic computer or basic office skills, check out some of these other kind of computer skills sites that we have linked here, because they're all very kind of useful. But you'll want this one right down here at the bottom, Udemy. So I'm going to click on that. And what this is going to do is it's going to take me to a sign-in page here where I'm going to enter in my library card number. And what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to, so I'm not showing you my library card number on the stream. I'm just going to hop out here before I type in my number here. Okay, so you have to have a valid Ferguson library card to be able to access that there. And then once you're in, there'll be another sign in that we have to do here. So click in sign in, and you'll either sign in with a Google or Microsoft account. I'm just going to quickly sign in with my Google account here. Again, I'm not showing it on the stream so that you're not able to see that. So once I've signed in with my Google account, we're into the Udemy here. And I can just come up here and do a search for Excel. And do a search. And now I can see here's Microsoft Excel from beginner to advanced. This is 17.5 hours, so you're going to get a lot more than me sitting here for 2 hours talking at you. 211 lectures, all levels, and so it'll take you from beginner all the way to advanced. So if you do decide this year and such, I really do hope that you join me next week for intermediate Excel, 7 to 9, Tuesday, September 29th. But yeah, so you would come here, and so like if you wanted to practice working with things like formulas and functions, there's like a whole like set of courses on that there. There's the complete Excel series. This year deals with a variety of different kind of Excels, 28 hours, 340 lectures. This is all available to you as a Ferguson Library member. Just need your card and then a Google or Microsoft account to sign in. So I highly recommend when you're looking to continue your education in using Excel, go check out Udemy. The final thing that I just want to kind of bring up to you before we close for the night is I have a survey here. This is just kind of a feedback survey. You go to projectoutcome.org/responses/50592. And what that'll do is that will take you to just kind of a brief feedback survey. There's a few questions and then some boxes to kind of enter in kind of if you have any other information that you want to share with me about this class. I thank anybody who attended. You're welcome to contact me at the Ferguson Library. If you have any questions, you can actually do it if you want to in like the chat on the class website. I do check that periodically, so you can go in and just kind of ask a question there. Or you can email me. My email is, if I go back to here, it's my first initial F and then my last name Skornia, Skornia, at fergusonlibrary.org. And you're welcome to email me there. Finally, let me just go back here and just show you is that if you want to find the survey link, this is actually not right. I will correct the survey link here with the right survey so that when you click this link here, it will go to the right survey. Because right now it's going to the wrong survey. So yeah. So thank you all for attending me. I hope to see you again next Tuesday night. And with that, I will hang around for just a couple of minutes to see when this catches up to see if you have any questions. But thank you very much.